Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, some big developments coming out of the Middle East. The Wall Street Journal reporting that Russia is sharing drone technology with Iran. No surprise that Russia is somehow cooperating and helping its ally Iran. There was word that they could be providing some sort of technology in terms of locations of U.S. troops and facilities. And now we're hearing that it's sharing drone technology with Iran, deepening its ties going up against the United States. And also, there's another report that just came out from Reuters just a few minutes ago saying that U.S. officials are weighing potentially sending thousands of troops to the Middle East near the Strait of Hormuz. What does that mean? I mean, obviously, they've got to secure that strait because it has been a very heated source of contention. And if oil can't flow free there, it is a problem for the world. And clearly, Israel is going after now a whole bunch of gas fields. We know that. We saw the latest of what they did when they went after Iran, a big gas pipeline there in Iran. And then you also have Iran striking back, hitting a location in Saudi Arabia just a little bit ago, also in Qatar and elsewhere. Qatar also just a little bit ago saying that they will pull back their representatives from Iran, that they no longer, in a sense, want to have diplomatic relations short term with Iran. So things are definitely amping up. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show. Here is Stephen Miller, of course, a very close ally of President Trump. And this is what he said are the objectives right now.
We went through the few people who are remaining. There's not that many. Head of the justice system, if you could call it a justice system. Was there anyone remaining that you think would actually, I don't want to say be trustworthy, or could be in a position to, quote, negotiate when it's obviously it's unconditional surrender? That's the only thing that we're going to demand or tolerate.
Look, the American military objective is to neuter the regime, to render them impotent. That is what President Trump is doing. Day by day, the regime is being rendered impotent in terms of being able to wield instruments of national power against the world. Ultimately, the Iranian people will have to decide for themselves what kind of future they want. But President Trump will not allow this regime, this bloodlusting regime, to hold us hostage with energy blackmail, missile blackmail, or nuclear blackmail. Not going to happen.
And Stephen Miller talking tough, saying no way. He also was talking about the latest strike that Israel did to take out the intelligence minister. This is the guy who was leading a lot of these sleeper cells around the world, including on U.S. soil. He is also one of the guys who was in charge of shutting down the internet. This is a guy who certainly has blood on his hands. And when I heard that he was gone, I think I popped some champagne. See ya. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. I love how Stephen Miller describes it as the mission is to neuter the regime, to render it impotent. And they're getting there, because who wants to be the leader of Iran right now? We have no idea really who is leading. We haven't seen the so-called Ayatollah's son, who may be alive, may be dead, may be disfigured. We don't know. But Stephen Miller already says that whenever this is over, they're not just going to have it be a free-for-all like it was under President Biden, where everybody just comes into the United States. And in fact, he said that no way will we have Iranian refugees come to our country. It's a pretty interesting statement, and he declared it tonight. Take a listen.
Stephen, to some of the other questions that I raised tonight, this one of a refugee crisis, which obviously that's not a military priority, but nevertheless, it's something that ultimately affects the region and can have spillover effects to the United States. We saw what happened when we brought in all these Afghan refugees. It's a disaster for the United States. What is the United States able to do to try to minimize any kind of refugee problem?
Well, remember, there's not going to be a refugee problem for the United States. That is a promise and a guarantee. Let's remember, the Afghan refugees came to the United States because Joe Biden, or the Biden administration rather, put them onto an airplane, or many airplanes, and flew them here, right? One after the other, after the other, after the other. They didn't just magically end up in the United States. We flew them here. Refugees come to the United States because they are flown to the United States. You also, of course, have illegal immigrants, too, and those come to the United States across the southern border, which has been shut down. So no one is getting across the border illegally, and no refugees are going to be flown to the United States. So therefore, no one can get in, no problem, no concerns, no issues, Laura.
Stephen Miller laying it all out there. And speaking of refugees and also illegal immigrants, this is a stunner tonight. I don't know who gets like the worst mayor award. There's a lot of competition these days. And you can certainly look at some of the things Zoran Mondani did on St. Patrick's Day, talking about genocide of Palestinians. It was just completely inappropriate. Some new details about his wife also tonight, and some of the comments that she made not that long ago. Let's see if the media in New York actually has a set of cojones and asks some questions of Mayor Mondani, as opposed to coddling him like they have pretty much left and right, like they did during the campaign and have continued pretty much to this day. But here's some competition for worst mayor of the year. And maybe it goes in part, maybe not totally again, but in part to Brandon Johnson, guys, of Chicago, because now he is coming out and saying that they are going to look at the Civilian Office of Police Accountability to investigate officers accused of helping federal immigration enforcement like ICE. In other words, they're a sanctuary city, Mayor Brandon Johnson is saying, and you cannot violate local sanctuary city laws. How dare you help with the federal authorities? So they're really trying to crack down and now make it so untenable for police officers. It's already tough enough for officers to work in Chicago under that guy, and he's about to make it a lot worse. He made this proclamation just a few hours ago, and I thought, boy, if this guy could only spend that much time on hardened criminals versus going after police, maybe the streets of Chicago would be a lot safer. Listen to what Brandon Johnson said. Progressive of progressive, radical of radical. Here he is.
In today's meeting, City Council approved a measure that empowers COPA to investigate if Chicago police officers violate the Welcoming City Ordinance, which prohibits all city employees from assisting federal immigration enforcement agents. This is a common sense measure that will maintain the trust that we have built between law enforcement and the community, especially our immigrant communities.
So he wants to spend his focused on law enforcement, going after them if they dare to cooperate with the feds. This is incredible. I never hear this guy saying, oh, we really want to crack down on crime. We really want to crack down on illegal immigration. No, he wants to crack down on cops. I mean, what a disgrace. And speaking of craziness and way too little, way too late, former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio finally admits that defund the police and open borders were bad ideas. Surprise, surprise, surprise. I wish he had sort of said those things while he was mayor, but I'm glad at least he's speaking out now. He sounds like Clint Eastwood compared to Zoran Mondani. But the New York City mayor sat down with my buddy Sean Hannity, and here is what he had to say first about illegal immigration and lax border security.
We agree on something profoundly. Okay. If By the way, if you're born an American citizen, you commit a serious or violent crime, you should pay the price for that. If you come here and you're not documented, you don't go through the process, and you commit a serious or violent crime, you should be out of here, period. So there's actually, I think, some real common ground on if we are going after those people.
They're getting those people. They're not just going after them.
But I think what I'm saying to you, and I want you to feel this, is there's a whole lot of people in this country, including people who voted for Donald Trump, who are like, I don't like all these other people that are being caught up in this who had nothing to do with it.
So I guess he's sort of saying, yeah, if you committed a violent crime and some other things, then you should be out of this country. So he's sort of getting, I guess, a little tougher than when he was mayor. And he's sort of advising Zoran Mondani a little bit. Clearly, Mondani isn't listening to that message because he still says, come one, come all. But here is former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, again with Sean Hannity, an unlikely pairing there. And he comes out and says that defund the police was a mistake. Here it is.
In retrospect, the whole concept of defund the police made no sense. It made sense to say, how can we do better? It made sense to say, hey, and by the way, a lot of cops told me this, a lot of police leaders told me this. We got to do a lot more for young people to give them positive alternatives because that's good for the police too. That's good for safety too.
We're not disagreeing.
Right?
This is amazing. So far, we're doing good.
We're doing good. So defund was a mistake, and I understand where it came from, but it was a mistake.
Yeah, it was a mistake. By the way, it's not really that complicated. I'm happy he's having some epiphany now that he's out of office, but let's not forget there were a lot of cops who turned their backs on him when he showed up at police funerals because he felt that he didn't have their backs. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Robert in Brooklyn on line 1. Go ahead, Robert, your thoughts tonight.
Hi, Rita. Thanks for taking my call. Well, first of all, I just want to point out what was pointed out on Katz and Cosby a number of days ago is that the Mamdani, the estate tax, you mentioned that he wants to lower it from $7.1 million to $750,000. But what you didn't stress, he also wants to increase the percentage, the rate, from 16% to 50%, which would mean that if someone inherited $1 million, let's say from their dad or mom, the $250,000, now he's going to be taxed at a 16%. No, he wants it to be taxed at 50%, which means that $250,000, he wants to take $125,000. And if you get $2 million, so then he would be getting like $600. We want to take away $625,000. It's literally a huge confiscation on all these people, these crazy people like in Park Slope and in Upper West Side. You realize what you've done. This guy is a hardcore communist, besides being an anti-Semite. And the other thing I want to point out is that I'm just trying to figure something out. I know I'm Jewish and I know you're Catholic. So I'm trying to understand something. You have this Carrie Prejean, who is on this board of religious tolerance and stuff like that. And she said something, she acted inappropriately, a very hard condemnation of Jewish people, Zionism, and you had Bill Donahue of the Catholic League condemning her, and then she was fired. But my question is, I'm trying to understand the current Pope. The Pope John Paul II, he was such a great guy, so nice. He visited the Roman rabbi in Israel. He visited the chief rabbi in Rome. Very, very nice. Also, Pope Benedict, he came out against the threat of Islam. And, Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict, they were opposed to communism. They were opposed to, the threat of Islam, Sharia. And now lately, when you have Pope Francis and his current Pope, I don't understand. You have this current Pope, he's condemning, apparently, there was the unfortunate situation with that school in Manab. So it's under investigation. But the thing is, anytime the slightest thing happens by accident, whether it's the United States or Israel, he seems to condemn it. I don't hear him condemning Iran when they attacked all those tens of thousands of people, or there was a church of the Holy Sepulchre got debris from an Iran rocket, or there were a couple of Palestinians, a number of Palestinians who were killed today from Iran. So I'm just trying to understand. There's all this anti-Semitism. Israel's being condemned as apartheid and genocidal, which is totally defamatory. But where is this current Pope Leo seems like he's a communist. He talks about that we have to take all these illegal immigrants into this country, and then he seems to condemn Israel and the United States. I don't see him denouncing genocide, the defamation of Israel as being genocidal.
Yeah, hold on one second, Robert. You got to take a breath. But I hear what you're saying. First off, okay, well, let me go to where you ended there. Pope Leo the 14th, and I have not met him. I've met the other popes in modern times, but I've not met him. But remember, he spent a lot of time in Peru as well. So he's got sort of, very much a sympathy towards immigrants. And it's a little hard to gauge sort of where he falls, but he seems to be falling a little closer, I think, to Pope Francis than certainly to Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul, I guess, on the spectrum. And so, but it's sort of typical often for popes. I mean, at least the modern times. I mean, Pope Francis was very liberal. I don't think there's any gray on that one. And what a difference he was from Benedict and Pope John Paul and the others. So I think some of them come from different moments, different times. Pope John Paul, of course, famous for joining forces with Reagan and others to help bring down the wall. I mean, that was an extraordinary time. And so you look at all of those moments, but I think also, I'm not really surprised. Often popes sort of tend to lean a particular way or try to stretch both sides, if you will. By the way, I met Pope Francis when he was planning a Mideast Peace Summit, and he was trying to bring both sides together. So if he could bring both sides together in particular conflicts, I'm talking about the Mideast at that point with the Palestinians and the Israelis, that's a good thing. But I agree, they shouldn't necessarily be picking sides, and they should also be trying to get rid of evil. That's for sure. Robert, great points as always. It's always good to hear from you. 1-800-848-9222.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's the Rita Cosby Show.
Well, just when you thought you heard it all from Mayor Mondani and his family, now more uncovered comments from his wife, the First Lady of New York City. This is according to the Washington Free Beacon. And a couple years ago, not that long ago, when she was living in the Middle East, she posted a picture of a plane hijacker with a quote saying, this is associated with the hijacker, "If it does good for my cause, I'd be happy to accept death." And then also blasting the U.S. military as well. What is going on? We got to talk about that.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
TaxAct can think of a million things more fun than filing taxes. TaxAct is going to name some now. Sitting in traffic, folding a fitted bedsheet, listening to your coworker talk about his fantasy team, digging a hole, digging an even larger hole next to that original hole. Unfortunately, TaxAct's filing software can't make taxes fun, but TaxAct can help you get them done. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment is sponsored by many things. And of course, we love the Back the Blue segment that we do every night here on the Rita Cosby Show. You know what a fan of law enforcement we are. And this one coming from Merrimack, Massachusetts, where two police officers and a good Samaritan helped save a woman's life after a big house fire just after 5:30 on his way to work. A citizen named Jeff Strogny said he was just driving when he suddenly noticed something unusual. He said, "I came around the corner and I suddenly saw flames at the backside of a house. It was really bad, 10 to 15 foot flames. That's big. And instead of panicking, the driver immediately stopped his car. He ran out. He called 911 and began trying to alert someone inside. He said he was banging on the doors because there were lights on the house. He said nobody was answering. Luckily, within about a minute or two, police officers arrived on the scene. Officers Paul DeCoste and Adam White of the Merrimack Police Department there in Massachusetts. Officer White said the smoke and thick smoke and heavy flames, too, were coming out of the rear side of the building, and it was very dangerous. One of the officers, though, ran inside and found a woman in her 70s. She was completely asleep in her bedroom. Imagine that. And he said, when I woke her up, she was very confused. She was very distraught. We tried to calm her down and explain, your house is on fire and you need to leave immediately. The officers were able to get the woman to safety, incredibly, without any injuries. So great teamwork by our men and women in blue. And of course, also that Good Samaritan who did the right thing and was there at the right time. What an incredible and powerful story. Well, we were talking about Bill de Blasio coming out saying defund the police wasn't a good idea. And now you also have Mayor Mamdani and you've got the First Lady of New York, Rama Dawaji. This is the one who was married to Zoran Mamdani. Now, she liked all these things about Palestinians, about Hamas and the horrible attacks that happened on October 7th. That was really bad. And remember, this is how Zoran Mamdani responded when the New York Media Corps was asking him about these crazy things that his wife was liking, saying on social media, oh, that's a nice comment. When you like something, it's like, oh, yeah, that's a nice comment. A nice comment that Hamas was slaughtering Israelis on October 7th. But Zoran Mamdani said she can say whatever she wants. Listen to this.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. You should have a chance, I think, to respond to this. It's an off-topic question. I'd like to know what your reaction was to the article in the Jewish Insider that was posted about your wife's social media activity. And what I'm wondering is, you're an elected official. She is not. Is it anybody's business, and is it fair to question you about it?
My wife is the love of my life, and she's also a private person who has held no formal position on my campaign or in my city hall. I, however, was elected to represent all 8.5 million people in this city, and I believe that it's my responsibility, because of that role, to answer any questions about my thoughts and my policies and my decisions.
What a terrible, pathetic, first of all, question from the reporter. I'm not sure who asked him that question. That reporter should not be in the business. That was pathetic. Did you hear it? It was like, you're an elected official. She's not. So I'm going to give you cover. And no big deal that the First Lady of the biggest city in America is saying, what happened on October 7th is essentially a good thing and deserved to happen to the Israelis. That's disgraceful. He, first of all, should have been held his feet to the fire. The other reporters in the room also should have been grilling him and saying, wait. Will you condemn these remarks? Will you condemn these remarks? They have given this mayor such a pass. It really is gross. That's one thing. The other thing, now his wife, it comes out, it wasn't just a one-off, not that we thought it was, but now we're knowing it certainly wasn't. According to the Washington Free Beacon, she had a Tumblr account, and in one of them, this was a couple years ago, she was hailing a Palestinian hijacker, Layla Khalid, and other members of the terror group Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. And in this account, she was showing a picture of this woman who took part in the plane hijackings in 1969 and 1970, and had a caption quoting one of her infamous lines. I was saying it earlier. This is from the hijacker. If it does good for my cause, I'd be happy to accept death. I mean, does that sound like a moderate in any shape or form? That's a lunatic. That is a dangerous lunatic. And then she also shared another thing that says, we salute the valiant freedom fighters of Palestine. That's great. And then she also reposted a tirade against U.S. service members that were raging against American troops, quote, fighting in imperialist wars are not brave, nor are they fighting for anyone's freedom. That's really nice. And then this post also goes on to blast the military further, mercilessly slaughtering third world civilians, referring to the U.S. military to maintain American hegemony. I mean, what is going on with this woman? And then December 2015, a repost which blamed white people for the creation of Al-Qaeda. This is a doozy. You ready for this? This sounds like Zohran Mamdani's father, remember, who was trying to make excuses for suicide bombers? It gets worse and worse. So this is, again, the First Lady of New York. And New York Press Corps, do your job and start asking questions to him about this. So here's the latest post that she also put. You can't blame Muslims for terrorism because they didn't construct, fund, nor train Al-Qaeda. White people did that too. And that's a post that she reposted, according to the Washington Free Beacon publication. I mean, is this sick or what? And I guess it goes in line because they seem to be very obsessed with this topic. No wonder they met each other. They fell in love over, I guess, hatred of Israel. But here is Zohran Mamdani at a St. Patrick's breakfast. And of course, he twisted the occasion to go after Israel once again and talked about Palestinian, quote, genocide. Listen to this.
I say this as over the past few years, as we've witnessed a genocide unfold before our eyes, there has been deafening silence from so many. For those who have long cared about universal human rights and the extension of them to Palestinians, silence, however, is nothing new. For Palestinians are so often left to weep alone. Yet former President Robinson has never been silent. Not when she was president, not when she was High Commissioner for Human Rights, and not in the decades since. As she once said, commemoration is a moral act. Her solidarity is many things: unwavering, sincere, and chief among them, Irish. Irish solidarity is no coincidence. Who can better understand those who weep than those who have been made to weep for so long? The story of the Irish, both in Ireland and in New York City, is at one time a story of oppression, of subjugation, and of discrimination. As we know, it was on Irish soil that the British Empire developed their colonial project. So much of the exploitation later imposed elsewhere across the world was first honed in the plantations of Ireland. And yet when I think of the Irish, I do not think first of oppression. I think of resistance. I think of unity. I think of corned beef and 96-minute Troy Parrott goals and the Pogues' fairy tale of New York. Above all, I think of that solidarity.
When I think of St. Patrick's Day, I think about all the joyous things of the Irish. I think of the Blarney Stone. I think of the leprechaun, green beer. I don't think of the Palestine, whatever, the genocide he's talking about, at a time right now where Israel is under assault and trying to get rid of the rogue terrorist regime. Whose side are these people on? And here's a little bit more from Mayor Mamdani's wife. This just came out. That's why my jaw is dropping, as you can probably tell. Apparently, she also seethed on Twitter that Tel Aviv shouldn't exist in the first place. Really lovely. And called its residents occupiers. And again, this comes, remember, after she celebrated, as I mentioned, that Instagram post, remember, on October 7th, 2023, the day that Hamas attacked Israel and slaughtered Israel. She was liking that celebration like it's a good day. And then also she liked a social media post claiming Hamas's rapes of Israelis, which is a fact, during the terrorist rampage were, quote, mass hoax. So don't believe anything. Those nice Hamas people couldn't have done those terrible things, I guess. And again, I'm just going to go back to what she said in this post, where she reposted blaming white people essentially for the creation of Al-Qaeda. You can't blame Muslims for terrorism because they didn't construct, fund, nor train Al-Qaeda. I mean, what planet is she on? What, blaming America? Is that what she's doing for Al-Qaeda? America created it? Sort of sounds like Hassan Piker, who said that America deserved 9/11. I mean, that's absolutely frightening. Absolutely frightening. I'll tell you a story, too. When I was over in the Middle East a number of years ago, I remember sitting down at a cafe, and a friend of a friend started telling me that 9/11 was just one big hoax that was planned by the U.S. government. They literally said to me, George Bush did that. And I thought like maybe I had wax in my ears and I misheard them. I was about to like gulp my water, right? I said, wait, what do you mean? Wait, come on, Rita, you're a smart person. You know that America created all of 9/11, that there were explosives in the buildings and also in the Pentagon, definitely in 9/11. This is crazy. I just said, I got to go. I'm so sorry. I got to go. I forgot I have an appointment right now. I got to go walk the dog. I got to do anything. Get away from this loony. But that sort of sounds like this looniness that we're hearing now from Mayor Mamdani's wife. This is dangerous. This is fanatical, and this is nuts. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Liz in Florida on line 4. Go ahead, Liz. You could probably hear it in my voice. I'm learning about this as you guys are. It gets worse and worse.
It sure does, Rita. Hi. They're just anti-American, and they're mentally ill or they're brainwashed, but they definitely have some sort of plan. And, I just think that the two of them must be so upset that we're fighting Iran, and they must be upset that President Trump and Bibi Netanyahu are good friends and are working together, and they must be even more upset that we're winning the war, and upset that we see their true colors. And I really believe he and his wife have a plan to change America one state at a time, but in the end, I believe they'll fail. The good will overcome evil.
I love where you're ending there, because I agree that good always does defeat evil, and power in numbers too, of good people too, for sure. But you brought up an interesting point. Yeah, wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall? And what are they thinking now that Trump and Netanyahu are doing such damage to Iran right now and destroying it? That it'd be fascinating. Be fascinating to ask Zohran Mamdani. What does he think? What does he think about these attacks on Iran? I know he kind of came out and said that he wasn't sure if there was really a plan. He didn't sounded like he was supporting it, especially at the very beginning, remember? So now that it's been going on for 3 weeks, it would be interesting to see what his thoughts are about the terrorist regime. And I guess, what does he think it's a good idea that Iran has a nuclear weapon? I mean, it really is. It's really shocking that this guy is the mayor of New York and his wife. And Liz, I'm really kind of taking the media to task tonight, too, because that reporter who asked that question, that was a disgrace. The one like, well, your wife, here's I'm going to give you an out because she's not elected. You are. So here's your cover. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And first of all, I hope tomorrow, after what I just revealed to you is out, I hope that the media doesn't give him a free pass, because if you're going to be mayor of the biggest city of New York, you better be able to handle tough questions. And this should be a whole bunch of questions. Will you condemn these comments? It's not a trick question, right, Liz? I mean, will you condemn that your wife was celebrating this? She can speak for herself. I hear what you're saying. She's private, not public, but she's liking them in a public manner. And you are the mayor. Will you at least condemn these comments? I would love to. It's a yes or no question. It's not a trick question, but it may be a trick question for Mamdani, right, Liz?
Yeah, I don't think that he'll never condemn it. And the media, they are to blame. And that's the problem, because he can get away with everything. And the two of them, every night probably try to figure out what to say next. And that's why he gets his few words in about Palestine. And, we all know it's not true. We all know that Israel and genocide don't mix. They care about their civilians. They throw pamphlets. Who does that if you're at war? To tell the civilians, get out of the way because we're coming in.
Pamphlets? So, they bring in food?
Right.
Come on.
Right. They gave all the Palestinians all this work. They brought them into Israel to work when Hamas spends billions of dollars to destroy Gaza. So, and we don't even talk about Gaza anymore. Really?
Yeah, you're right.
No
You're
one's
right.
talking about Gaza.
And by the way, let's not forget that Hamas is, of course, a proxy of who? Of Iran. So it would be interesting to ask him, your wife liked these comments. So will you condemn Hamas? Will you condemn Iran? And right now, you heard Mahmoud Khalil. I played that quote yesterday. That was a doozy, where he said, asking a Palestinian to condemn Hamas is racist. And remember, he's good friends with Mandani. So the plot thickens. I got to find that one because I'm going to play that one again for you tonight because I guess it's racist to ask about terrorists. 1-800-848-9222. Everybody, we will continue on the Rita Cosby Show after the break.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You've been there, settling in for an evening of TV only to waste half the night scrolling. Enter Fire TV, entertainment with zero effort required. Fire TV serves up personalized recommendations from across all your apps. Not sure what to watch? Just tell Alexa Plus what you're in the mood for and she'll pull up the perfect recommendation. Problem solved. Stop the scroll, start the show. Find what you're looking for with Fire TV. Subscriptions may be required.
Every rep starts the same. Your limits are real, but so is your potential. New unrestricted power training gear from Lululemon, built with our most powerful fabric. Every push is supported, so you can drive through the hardest presses. Every squat and lift, unrestricted, flexing and stretching for max range of motion. In the gym, you don't know what you're truly capable of yet. Get into unrestricted power and find out. Now online at Lululemon.com.
Rated T for teen.
Hey everyone, it's the best in the world, CM Punk, back to shake up WWE 2K26. This year, the show never stops. You're running the greatest spectacle on earth with the biggest roster we've ever had. Over 400 superstars and legends from every era. Stack the tables, break the rules, burn it all down. And yeah, my very own showcase, telling my story the way it should have been told. Because when the show never stops, anything is possible. Available March 13th, pre-order now.
With Venmo Stash, a toggle on one hand and ordering a ride in the other means you're stacking cash back. With Venmo Stash, get up to 5% cash back when you pick a bundle of your favorite brands. Earn more cash when you do more with Stash. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply. Max $100 cash back per month. See terms at venmo.me/stash terms.
This is the Rita Cosby Show.
And in the next hour here on the Rita Cosby Show, we will play those comments from Mahmoud Khalil again, where he says it's racist to ask a Palestinian to condemn Hamas. No, it's a sane, normal question. Will you condemn ruthless killers, or do you think they're great? I mean, it's not a difficult question. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Lamar in North Philly on line 5. Go ahead, Lamar.
Good evening, Ms. Cosby. We're out in the field tonight, so I'm going to make it brief. You mentioned St. Patrick's Day, and what St. Patrick's Day brings to my recollection is a man who Commanding General Bedell E. Smith said was the greatest infantryman of all time. There will never be an infantryman like Audie Leon Murphy, a native Texan from Kingston, Texas, who was born into a poverty-stricken family. And the only way he could put meat on the family table was by using a rifle that had been gifted to him by a friendly rancher, because they didn't have food stamps. They didn't put him and his family up in a 5-star hotel. That man went on to become the most decorated soldier in the history of this republic for what is known in military terminology as conspicuous valor, gallantry, and intrepidity in the face of the enemy. He personally killed over 241 heavily armed combatants, not old men, women, and children, but members of the German Wehrmacht, the best infantry of the modern period. This man is what I remember when I think about St. Patrick's Day. And the first St. Patrick's Day in New York City, where you are right now, Ms. Cosby, occurred 16 years before the original 13 colonies were able to break free from the British Crown. Let me tell you all something out there in Radio Land. When that man from Kingston, Texas, that native Texan of Irish heritage, was 12 years old. He was so impoverished, he had to hire himself out to chop cotton. And let me tell y'all something. Chopping cotton in the relentless Texas sun ain't easy. He didn't have no affirmative action or food stamps. You hear what I'm saying? And on top of all that, since we're going to talk about St. Patrick's Day, the Irish, who are not the majority demographic in this country, have somehow been able to accumulate more congressional medals of honor than any other demographic, and that is to include the once upon a time Anglo-Saxon majority. That's what the Irish have done in this country. You want to talk about the Irish? Let's talk about American heroes like Order Leon Murphy, United States Army from Kingston, Texas. And if you don't know that name, shame on you, because men like that must be exalted so that our young people can know what their real history is. Look at that
by
name.
the way,
Leon
Lamar, I love your fire. And you're right. The fact that this guy used St. Patrick's Day to talk about, quote, Palestinian, the genocide on Palestine, it's a disgrace. I'm glad you reminded us of the heroes of Ireland.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?